We have several, we have now completed a first pass overview through the entire agenda. And some of the things we went through earlier in the week and last week, it looks like we have reached some of the compromises and drafted some of the language and had everybody had a chance to look at it so that some of these issues are ready to close in a variety of subject matter areas. So we will start at resources. It is my understanding that there may be agreement on page 12 of the resources, the forest sector emissions reduction programs, an agreement on the Senate language without prejudice to, I think, what the Assembly was trying to do for in future.
Right. Yep, we'll move it.
Okay, Mr. Blumenfield moves the Senate version. Hold on. That's fine. What's the issue?
Are you just doing the Senate only because it's no language?
Right.
Okay.
Oh, no trailer bill. No trailer bill. Yeah, just, okay. Okay. On a 5-0 vote, that will be adopted. Okay, so there's no trailer bill. So no trailer bill, just the dollars. Okay. Page 14. This one is a reappropriation. No. Oh, no. This is, okay. The suggestion here, members, without prejudice to this program that everybody appreciates, this is the one with the 1E funding, right? All right. So what we have found is that there actually is $4 to $5 million, I believe, finance already appropriated to this program from Proposition 40. That's there available for this program for the budget year. And so whether we needed to go ahead and start appropriating these 1E funds now seemed perhaps premature, and on that basis, the suggestion is the Assembly version. But there is money for the program to function this year. The decision will come back to this legislature again in the future if there is some other better way to do this. But the 1E had complications, and there is Prop 40 money, which is clearly legitimate for the purpose.
Could I just what is the in-process money again that's available for this year?
Prop 40. I understand it's Prop 40, $4 to $5 million.
And is it? It's
a reappropriation.
Is it moving? Are there any impediments? Is that money going to go out this year? Do we have any problems getting it moving?
Matt Almy, Department of Finance. The issue as to why it hasn't been spent to date had to do with the bond freeze from about a year ago. Okay. And so the request was to reappropriate funds that had already been appropriated because there was delays as a result of the bond freeze. So there's about $5.9 million
$6 million.
That will be available this year. The distinction, however, is that the Prop 40 funds are really dedicated to the Sierra Nevada areas, 14 counties in the Sierra Nevada region. The Prop 1E money is more statewide and will be focused more on the wildland urban interface areas where there's more structures.
Okay, now that said, available and getting spent are different matters.
Yes.
Is there anything this conference committee could do to expedite the money rolling out the door?
Because the bond freeze is no longer an impediment, I don't see any reason why the money wouldn't be able to be go out the door.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, on that basis, Mr. Huff.
Yeah, given that a lot of these fires are in the urban areas, those are the ones that are causing problems or where the urban areas are encroaching on this, I think this is an important thing to have more of a statewide approach as opposed to a limited pocket of money.
Leo, I think it's but the only program that has been not funded here is the one, the Sierra Nevada one that's already been started that ran out of federal funds or whatever it was doing. Leo, am I right?
I believe so, Madam Chair, yes. And the issue, the reason that this was put into conference was concerns over the appropriateness of the use of 1E funding for this purpose.
Yeah, the problem is it's not at all clear that 1E can be used in this way without some other kinds of changes. So given that this program could be funded out of the existing Prop 40 where there is no legal issue, and cross your fingers and hope that we can find an alternative source next year for the other idea, which is like a new program.
And is it not correct the 1E will be more towards the closer urban interface? Is that what I heard?
That's right. That's the focus, is the wildland urban interface.
That's the proposal, but it's essentially a new program with questionable funding. So
what LEO is saying, it's not an appropriate funding for 1E? Is that what is somebody saying that? Because I haven't heard that.
That's correct, Senator. There was concerns from both houses that whether this was an appropriate use of the Prop 1E funds, which was essentially a flood measure that was approved by the voters.
But what is do you have an opinion on, I don't know, two houses, but what's the LEO? Do you see something in there that says it's not? I thought it was clean water and so forth.
The provision that the administration was proposing was with regard to stormwater.
Right.
And at the time of the proposal, we didn't have any issues with it.
Oh, you didn't have any issues with it?
At the time of the administration presented the proposal.
Okay. Well, we would support the administration's issue. I mean, we've had a lot of problem with water contamination and stuff due to the wildfires and everything else. I just think that was an appropriate use for the money. So,
but this wasn't. This is the admission. Oh no, this is the other one. Hold on. Go ahead, Mr. Blumenfield.
Yeah, no, just this money was originally for stormwater in the urban areas. I mean, it's not that the things you're talking about are not important, but it's something that can be funded legitimately through other sources.
Well, what exactly do you call raining on denuded hill slopes? That's stormwater runoff, and it's very muddy. In addition to taking out houses and stuff, it ends up in the storm channels and ends up all the way to the ocean. So that sounds like there's a nexus.
All right, so it's not a legal issue. It's more of a question of what is the priorities for use of 1E funds, which were originally for levees and floods.
but that's what happens when you have these fires that we've all experienced up and down. Mudslides and everything occur afterwards, as well as contaminating the groundwater that's going in, that's actually going into our basins in some areas and so forth. So my understanding with this would be is that this would help mitigate or lessen those potential risks. And I think it's pretty obvious now that you know, our problems with fires are not going to go away. And so it would appear to me that this is very appropriate. This is like a prevention measure so that we can make sure that the water quality coming into our basins on the natural don't get contaminated due to runaway fires and things of that nature. So anyway, that's would be our...
Well, the Prop 40 funds that have been used for the existing Sierra-based fuels management program, which we now know there's still $6 million left to fund, can those be used statewide rather than just for the Sierra? I mean, I don't know what the Sierra project needs.
My understanding is the Prop 40 language was specific to Sierra Nevada. It's a constraint on the bond funds.
Okay, that's
on the Prop 40 bond funds, and the Prop 1E is more broad from that perspective.
And I wouldn't take away from the Sierra Nevada because that's...
No, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure what we were... that's where the issue was, because you couldn't use that for this. But the administration's actually proposing a new program.
Correct.
That has not existed. I mean,
well,
a little...
just to clarify, there is baseline funding in CAL FIRE for fuel management. About $5 million of state funds, another $5 or so million of federal funds for statewide fuel management activities. So this is stuff that CAL FIRE, does. But given the need of and the risks statewide of wildland fires and the public safety implications, there is still plenty of room to do more fuel prevention, fire prevention, fuel management activities.
Projects that were contemplated by 1E, which was a fairly small bond that was really about levees and deltas and flood management, what projects won't happen if you take this money out to do something that was not contemplated at the time that 1E was written?
Yes. So yes, there are opportunity costs, and so there are the DWR's stormwater program funds projects to local agencies for various stormwater projects that have flood related. That improve flood management that also has a multi-purpose benefit for stormwater runoff as well.
What's the overall pot of money left in that category?
I believe 1E provided about $300 million. I'd have to get back to the committee on that. It's a specific allocation in 1E for stormwater, and I believe it's in the $300 million range.
So we're talking 5.5. So.
For clarification, this proposal is a $40 million proposal over 7 years.
So
this would be the first year
appropriation.
First year.
Yeah, Ms. Skinner.
The issue on page 13, the ERI, those funds could be used for the purposes for which we're discussing, correct?
They could be used. The administration is proposing that they be in the budget year that we achieve $76 million of general fund savings. To the extent you allocate it for a different purpose, that would then be a general fund savings that's not realized.
But this fund is appropriate for the management in those areas versus taking the stormwater monies away from.
Yeah. So you're referring to the ERI fund?
Correct. ERI
yes.
fund.
So the administration has its own proposal to fund to enhance the emergency response capabilities. So you still have. I would say that it would potentially be eligible, but that would mean less money for emergency response capabilities.
Just to build on that, it would be a much better fit, right? I mean, it's much more closely aligned with ERI than it is with converting stormwater in urban areas into this other use.
Well, we believe that Senator Dutton, I think, said it appropriately, that fuel management does have stormwater runoff benefits. To the extent that you have catastrophic wildfires, there are implications on water quality in the watershed. So we believe 1E is an appropriate use for this purpose, and that there is a clear nexus here.
Well, what does your new program look like? I mean, has anybody seen this? Is it in statute anywhere? I mean, what are we?
I would say that.
Where is it going to be, and what's the study is based on? I mean, what issue? Where is it that we're having this issue? I mean, what's
the focus is in wildland-urban interfaces throughout California, including Southern California. I would say Southern California, given the fact that
where we've had fires. And hillsides are falling into rivers. Is that what we're talking about? But I mean, I just don't know that it's been identified. I don't know that there's been any. You just invented this sort of.
If you would like, I think CAL FIRE could probably come up with provide some information. The administration can provide some information as to the allocation in specific regions, in specific areas. All I can tell you is that this is a statewide program that will identify risk on a statewide basis, whereas the Prop 40 was more targeted and directed towards Sierra Nevada.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Nielsen.
Well, I would suggest we proceed with the Assembly version. The Prop 40, that's all has its legal foundation and construct. But it might be appropriate to ask CAL FIRE to give us information about where the Prop 40 monies are going to flow, and then the assurances of Prop 1E to accommodate the concerns of other members here, which I share. I think these urban interfaces are critical, and we've seen some huge problems just in the last year. And by the way, this fuels management thing, if you were in Sacramento the summer before last when all the big fires, and those fires were not close to Sacramento, that affected all this valley hugely. So there's other implications, too, in terms of air quality. But my point is, why don't you get back to us as we move ahead with this, but get to all the members with the 1E. Where are those interfaces? What are they going to be like? I know they don't have them identified by CITES, but just the assurance that money's going to flow to those areas, because that it is critical.
I mean, I appreciate that, Mr. Nielsen. We had left this open so that Finance could look for alternative financing options. They hadn't come up with any, and I'm now more concerned about just designing the program before we fund it. I can understand the need, to look at forestry hillsides that then have water quality implications, but I think we ought to at least be able to see what they're studying and prioritize it, and maybe it's a lesser amount. I mean, I don't know what that is or how to prioritize the projects, since it's a new program nobody's seen. Mr. Huff?
I know down in my district, I've certainly had the station fire recently. You had the freeway fires here before. You've had some down in San Diego area. It's anywhere you have an urban interface, you have this problem. And when the rains come, there's nothing to hold it back. So it does impact. It sounds like a nexus here, but I would just say that regarding the ERI, Ledge Council's already opined that that's a tax. And so when you start saying, is that an appropriate fit? Well, yeah, any tax you raise new money, you can put it wherever you want, but it's going to take a particular type of vote to get it. You can't just call it a fee and then do it by majority vote, because then it doesn't stand up to legal muster. Then you don't really have the funds to do what you want to do. So I think what we're trying to do is find some fit with funds we have, resources we have already to accomplish what we need to get done.
Madam Chair? And
Hold on one moment. All right, Mr. Fuentes.
Just quick questions. How much money is left in the Prop 40? I mean, the funding is available for how much longer?
The Prop 40 program is going to run out this year. The $6 million that is being referenced is essentially the last allocation of that pot of money from Prop 40.
And to contrast the 1E funds, how restrictive are they? I mean, I'm sure there was some bond language that sort of restricted how it could be spent. What are those restrictions?
The restrictions are that it be dedicated to activities that reduce stormwater runoff. And so to the extent that there is a programmatic nexus between reducing fuel to prevent fires and consequently reducing stormwater runoff, then you can then it would be an eligible use, as long as there's the fit with the stormwater runoff.
I would probably want some more clarification, because I imagine that the bond language is very specific. I mean, the nexus part, I think we can all, in anecdotal fashion, make nexuses here, but I mean, I'd like to have more information. But in the meantime, I think Mr. Nielsen's proposal is a very good one. I'd be supportive of moving the Assembly version.
Mr. Blumen? No. Okay. I think maybe subject to Finance or somebody bringing forward this new program in some fashion that people could look at and think about what the timing and what the locations are, and perhaps there is some 1E source that could be used, or some other source, depending on what it is. I mean, I think we left it open only because Finance had said they might have some alternative funding sources for their proposal. They didn't come up with any, and so that's where we are today.
I just need a clarification, because it seemed to me like the Assembly proposal was just to deny the governor's request.
Right.
So is that... So you're not doing anything about Prop 40 then?
Well, the Prop 40 is there. See, we thought the request was tied to the fact that the Sierra program was starting to run out of money. But in fact, the Sierra program is covered under the Prop 40. And that's appropriated, and that's fine. And that's what we found out.
All right, that's fine.
And it's just this newer program that they were trying to get the 1E money. And to the extent Sierra Nevada needs that money, next year there's enough money to carry them through this year, basically. All right. On a 3-2 on the Senate side, 4-5. Ms. Conway?
I'm struggling, Madam Chair, because I'm aware of other people trying to do other things with the 1E money.
Right. That's You could stay off. That's fine.
I'll stay
4
off
to
for now.
0.
I'm going to stay off for now.
4 to 0, 1 abstention on the Assembly side, 3 to 2 on the Senate side. And Finance is welcome to come back with some explanation about the new program and an analysis of what's in 1E and what the demand in 1E is. But I think until we see some of that, folks are not kind of ready to go there. Okay. Okay, back in resources. We are now on page, what are we on? 17. There's some Assembly budget bill language, Finance? Is that, it's governor's version plus budget bill language? Something like that? LAO? Assembly? I think, did we change the budget bill language at all, or it's just Assembly? Okay.
Finance has no concerns with the Assembly language.
Okay, so Finance is okay with Assembly version is moved on page 17. Senator Dutton is a no. Who else? 3 to 2 on the Senate side. What's the problem? What's the issue? Finance is okay. Okay, I got it. Okay, 3-2 on the Assembly side as well. Okay, it's the they just don't like doing that. Finance, you didn't find an alternative source to pay for this with. We did talk, I think, the first time about whether to do 118 money or some other. But you think this is an appropriate source to fund this with?
Correct.
All right.
The Assembly.
It's a little dicey. Okay. Governor and Assembly version on a 3-2 vote. All right, what else we got? Page 21. Senator Lowenthal moves the Assembly version. Is there any objection to the Assembly version on page 21? Okay. 3-2 on the Senate side.
Madam Chair, I believe that there are implications here in part from the water bond policy of serving disadvantaged areas. Isn't that also?
I think it's just consistent with those. It's about doing a pilot project that.
That was a big issue in the budget, in the water bond, water policy debate. I'd be okay on this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was, and this is like a pilot program in an agricultural rural area where water systems are pretty contaminated and there's all sorts of issues.
Would serve in the disadvantaged areas.
That the water district's okay with? 3-2 on the Senate side.
Yeah,
4,
okay.
5, 5-0 on the Assembly side. All right, page 21. Page 21, Assembly version. Yeah, you did.
I don't have a problem.
I have a note here on page 22. Oh, I don't think this is ready, but where are we on this one? This Davis-Dulwig problem is eternal. There's a study proposed, somebody, anybody? Budget bill language? Is that?
There's a study proposed by the
Talk into your microphone or get closer to it or turn it on or something. There you go. There you go.
The Assembly did propose a study that would be undertaken by the State Water Project to give us more information for the next year. It's generally been somewhat agreed upon by folks around the table. The things that are still up for debate are the appropriation of money for this purpose, or for the Davis-Dulwich projects, and then also trailer bill language.
Yeah, this one's problematic. I don't know how we settle this one. It's been a fight for how many years? It's 20 or 30.
What happens if we just do the study?
Yeah, can we just do the study?
What happens in that scenario?
If just the study is done, we buy ourselves a little time And we can go into the next year knowing, though, that there must be a solution next year to the Davis-Dahlweg issue.
Really?
Over the next 6 months, there could be discussions that take place between the legislature and the administration or within the legislature to try and figure this out. It's a second-best solution because there was a compromise that was proposed that would have given some money to the department as well as allowing trailer bill language that the legislature may wish to adopt. However, if the study comes back with more information, perhaps we have a better opportunity to come up with a comprehensive solution to Davis-Dahlweg.
I'm a little nervous about doing trailer bill here on an issue that's this crazy.
Now, what's the
Mr.
study
Dutton?
for? I mean, what's in the study? What are you studying?
There's a fundamental issue with Davis-Dahlweg that has been going on probably for the last 47 years.
47, see, I missed it, but okay.
It might actually be 48 now. With regard to an allocation methodology, which is currently used by the administration to allocate these indirect costs, so not actual physical costs of recreation, but indirect costs of recreation to public funds. The legislature only received the request 2 years ago, and prior to that, for a period of 13 years, there had actually not been a request for funding. So what the study would be looking at is the feasibility of amending potentially the methodology and how that would fit with the existing contracts in the State Water Project, and also presenting a way forward. The administration has presented the same proposal 3 times now to the legislature, and this study would seek to kind of move us on from that and actually to achieve a settlement.
And who does the study?
We recommend, the Assembly recommended an independent contractor.
Like a university, could we just contract with our own folks, or?
This would be a contract within the State Water Project. They have a number of contracts with folks
Within the State Water Project
Yes,
funds,
and they have
not DWR's regular budget. It'd be a
That's
State
correct.
Water
And
Project.
There's folks who have taken a look at this, the accounting methods for the State Water Project over a number of years, and they are qualified. They have the expertise. This was a question that they didn't answer in their last study. So we think that it's not only possible, and the department has indicated that it is possible to get the information back in the amount of time to review for the next budget cycle.
We have no issue with the language related to the study. We actually would support that, but we do also support funding as well as trailer bill language.
Yeah, but I think that the point of maybe amending the Assembly's trailer bill into budget bill rather than trailer bill, just so we're not kind of creating statute, but make the study budget bill language, is to keep it open. I mean, I think the problem of the governor's trailer bill, wipes out what some folks will argue is a $150 million debt. Whether we agree with that or not, I hope, would be the point of the study. Is to figure out whether such a creature actually exists or not, rather than just kind of doing it in trailer and then getting sued and then trying to figure it out later. The ongoing money I had some question about, but I don't know what level of, if we appropriated any of the funds we get into, we've admitted that the governor's trailer bill is wrong kind of problem.
Madam Chair,
Mr.
I might
Nielsen?
suggest that we might want to take the Senate version plus the study. Okay, in other words, I think the study actually makes a certain amount of sense, and I think everybody sounds like they're in agreement. So,
does that, in fact, then you're leaving out the trailer bill language? I'm very concerned about just obviating that debt. Water contractors have assumed the burden for a very long time, have not been paid. They've done what they were required to do under Davis-Dahlweg, and I just to extinguish that debt, I would not go along with that.
No,
I just meant we should get the study. You need to get the study done.
I think
anyway,
the suggestion is, I don't know if the Assembly's is Senate dollars, which is basically zero even in the current appropriations, no trailer bill, but budget bill language that asks for the study for the Assembly's trailer bill language, but turned into budget bill language. But it's budget bill language, so that it's a 1 year, so they give it to us now and you have to deal with it again next year. Unfortunately, it means it comes back next year, but I don't know that we're ready. I don't know if somebody's got a policy. Finance, have you thought of doing a policy bill on this? Because it is a huge issue. In 47 years, you'd think somebody would have done a policy bill, but...
Well, the Davis-Dahlweg Act, it was a policy bill.
Yeah, exactly. That would be the problem.
And
yeah, but it needs to be changed if we're amending the Davis-Dahlweg Act or reinterpreting it.
Yeah. I would just say, given the
seem like an
budget
appropriate place to do
implications, that's why it was trailer bill language, but we certainly
No, I
concede the
understand that.
point. We certainly concede the point that this is a major policy issue.
No, I understand.
No doubt about it.
Yeah, I understand. Is it because suddenly, after 47 years, like the money's due or something? I mean, we haven't paid it in 47 years.
I
but-
think the catalyst for this was a couple years ago, the Attorney General's office ruled that DWR wouldn't be able to bond without getting the recreational share of these State Water Project facility projects funded 100%, because the State Water Project gets 99% of its money from the water contractors, but then there's a recreational benefit of which the state owes a certain amount, and without getting that last portion, it would potentially compromise their ability to bond. We ended up figuring out a way administratively to move forward, but we still need a more comprehensive approach. The other issue is Prop 84 does provide funding for this purpose.
No, I see what you're doing, but I think we may be heading down a tricky path, much as I think the projects are okay. And actually, the new water bond also has some of this sort of notion of recreational in there. So we need to settle up these percentages and what is recreational benefit versus what's just because it's their benefit. I don't know.
The action that the committee has before them with the study and no money would not hamper the Department of Water Resources in the near term.
Yeah.
And so it is a good action to take because it allows us the information we really need to have
And I
a
think
different policy coming
to have the real policy. And I suggest somehow administration, somebody draft a policy bill and start it early in the session while the study's still being done and allow people maybe to really kind of work this through. But any objection to Senate version plus Assembly budget as budget bill language? Hearing none. On a 5-0-5-0 vote, that action will be adopted. All right, page 24. There is a proposed conference compromise.
That's right. That's right.
Someone? Leo? Anybody? Anybody know what it is? Okay, I have it here, right?
We do have a proposed conference compromise, and that came out, our conference compromise came out as a handout. However, we understand that there's a subsequent compromise that slightly amends that. The amended compromise we would agree with. It moves us forward, and it seems to take parts of...
This is the amended one, or this is the...
This is the amended one that's coming out in yellow to you.
All right. 3 parts.
So we would support the conference compromise.
And the 3 parts do what? Just while everybody's receiving it, just...
The compromise would add to the integrated regional water management several amendments to allow for grandfathering of certain program activities. The Proposition 1E and Proposition 84 just clarifies what the technical reversions are going to be on that. And then also on item 3, which is the Delta Natural Communities Conservation Planning, this would be no change to existing law, which we do support. So it's essentially what you've heard before with some very minor changes. And we do think that it's a good compromise between the 2 houses. And this was raised by the houses, not in the Budget Act.
Finance, you have any issues here?
We don't have any issue with this aspect of the action and of this compromise proposal as far as these 3 parts. We still have concerns about the stormwater language that both houses took in regards to Prop 1E funding.
The one we just did. Is that the one you're talking about?
No.
We did language in this area?
There was language in this area. It was part of a broader action related to modifications of the 2009 water legislation. These are the only parts that are in conference.
I see.
We still have concerns about the stormwater language.
Was it on the same general item number in the under the base budget bill? Is it in the same neighborhood issues as this one, or?
Yes, it's in that same package.
Okay. All right. We will note for future possible consideration, finances concern with stormwater language, same item. But in the meantime, on these 3 items, is there any Opposition to adoption of the proposed conference compromise. Stay off, okay. Okay, 3-0 on the Senate side.
I want to stay off.
You
of
too.
this.
3-0 on the Assembly side. Okay.
I'm worried about that.
Sign, but we need a package. Okay. Page 29, basin planning, finance. You're okay with the Senate version, I hear? Let me see.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
We're okay with the Senate, too.
The Assembly's okay with the Senate? Anybody? Oh. Let me see, what is it? Page 29? I think it's just one issue, right? Yeah, we did one issue on the top. That was the water rights. This is different. Oh, this is the basin planning. I get it. Okay. Okay, on a... Oops, I lost too many pages in this book now. Okay. 3-2. Okay. Senate version. Okay with finance on a 3-2 vote. That will be adopted. Okay, page 30. On the basin place, Senator Leno?
No.
Somebody, I thought he... All right, Mr. Leno had some... we're at page 30, the Department of Toxic Substances Control. Senator Leno, I think, had some questions on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is funding so that the Chemistry Toxics Information Clearinghouse can be funded and move forward. And we had a presentation in the Environmental Caucus just the other day by some stakeholders who issued a long list of concerns. I thought that we might be able to just review some of them before we actually close it.
Okay. You want to... Okay. You don't want to express them to finance, or you're already in discussions with the department? Somebody?
I can certainly raise some of the questions if you like.
Just so we know what...
We'll do our best to answer them.
The issue of closing data gaps, that there are about 90% of the chemicals that have little or no publicly known hazard information. And so I'm not sure how the process is going to work. Does this need to be in the spending plan, or do we need some commitments from the department with regard to making sure that the manufacturers aren't able to conduct their own alternative studies without any third-party overview?
Okay. I think that's somewhat of a two-part question. The spending plan itself was really meant to respond to how the department will continue to fund this effort once the database really is more of a tool. It's really more the registry and the subsequent enforcement that goes on with that. And the spending plan was really meant to respond to that aspect of the program going forward, recognizing that there are a variety of means by which they could pay for it, including increasing the existing environmental fee or creating a new fee. The data gaps, I think, speak more to the technology aspect of this and building the system. And I think for that level of technical detail, I think we would need to have a dialogue with the department.
So then, focusing on the spending plan itself, where will the conversation be as to who's going to be funding this? Are we going to ask taxpayers through general fund monies to support this, or are we going to look at potential polluter pay fees?
The department will determine, once its regulations are formally developed, which won't be until January of 2011, they will evaluate a number of funding alternatives, which, as I said, could be the environmental fee. It could be a manufacturer's fee that's assessed on those that develop this. It could even be a fee at the consumer point of purchase, whereby the consumer is provided the choice of making a green chemistry choice of their purchase or a more traditional one, and there would be a fee assessed with that. The intent is not, at this point, not to pursue a general fund purpose for this, because there are a variety of fee mechanisms available, all of which would require some sort of statutory authorization. So the legislature would be engaged in that aspect of funding the program.
So if you could repeat that last part, how the legislature will have some say as to how these regulations that the department's putting forward.
Well, it would be the fees. The regulations are in response to statute already, but the fee aspect of the program, as it's funded going forward, would require some sort of statutory action.
Gotcha.
The Toxic Substances Control Account, for example, requires legislative authority to increase. Any point of purchase fee would also have to be statutorily authorized, any manufacturing fee similarly. So there is an engagement that has to go on to authorize the collection of the fee.
So there's concern also that the current regulations create an overly cumbersome process and that this is going to take years and years and years out and nothing's actually going to get done in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
Where is our leverage point if it's not in potentially even some language for this item relative to the spending plan, or is that at some future date?
I think the challenge becomes, making that kind of assessment when the regulations themselves have not been finalized. They're currently going through development. There will be a public process, as with all rulemaking that the department undertakes. So it's, I think, somewhat difficult to say how limited the rulemaking may be at this point until it's actually completed.
And you said the regulations will be completed when?
The target pursuant to the statute is January 1 of 2011. I believe they are supposed to have those released, and then a regulatory process follows from that, public notice, public hearings, and the like.
All right.
Okay. Well, then I think there's no need to hold this up. Oh, did he? Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
That's
let's see. I think Senator Lowenthal had some issues too that he may be discussing with the department. We'll leave it briefly open for them to discuss with whomever. I think the subcommittee had some issues, and Senator Lowenthal's on that subcommittee. So one more quick round. We'll leave that
I appreciate
open.
that. Thanks.
All right. On the PUC, page 35, the Teleconnect Fund, does anybody have any objection to the assembly version? I think everybody's received information now that indicates they actually can and do have a plan for spending this broadband money in our rural counties. Mr. Nielsen, I think that was our issue, and that was why the Senate had done less. It wasn't clear they could spend it, and it now appears that they do have projects in line. Finance, you agree with that?
Actually, that's not our understanding. If there is information indicating that, we'd like to look at it. But our understanding is that there hasn't been a lot of interest in access to this money.
LAO, I saw a letter that said, now the demand has gone up substantially in a very recent period of time. But LAO, have you seen that? Or?
Madam Chair, we actually have not seen the letter.
Oh, okay. Sorry. It came to members. Did other members get it? I got it. Mr. Blumenfield?
Doesn't this tie to ARA funds that are being made available?
I think that's part of it. I think a lot of them...
There's an element potentially of the ARA funding.
That now have ARA funds. They've developed the projects, and now they can use the match because they actually have developed the projects. That's what at least some of us have been led to believe. This is the designated purpose for those funds. It's not like these used for anything else. So, I don't know. Anybody object to the assembly version? See if they can spend it? All right. 3-2 on the Senate side. 4-5. Ms. Conway? You're okay? 5-0 on the assembly side. 3-2 on the Senate to approve the assembly version. Okay. Page 37, LEO, what is this one? Trailer bill versus budget bill versus, I don't know what.
There's a couple of issues here. The first is that the Assembly wants to have a new contract to be led on the Delta plan. There was a previous action in conference committee that would have rejected giving the council extra time for the Delta plan. Essentially, if we relet the contract for the Delta plan, you need extra time to finish the Delta plan. We do support this, the Senate version, which simply asks for a conflict of interest statement to be included in any contracts for the Delta plan or for other actions at the council so that they're not in conflict with other Delta activities, including the Bay Delta Conservation Plan.
Finance?
We don't have any issue with the Senate language.
Anybody?
We haven't seen this yet, language.
We're moving toward the Senate, but we're not ready to close it.
You're not there yet either. Okay, that's fine. I just thought we should discuss it.
We have not
briefly.
seen the Senate language either. I have
sorry.
great reservations because this looks to me like it's going the opposite direction of our laborious negotiation on the creation of the Delta Stewardship Council. So we need to slow down.
I think that's what's got everybody nervous. It is a Delta Stewardship Council. It is related to all the work done last year. The Assembly, I think, proposed there is an issue that has arisen about the potential contractor doing things both for the BCDC and the Stewardship Council. The Senate resolved it by saying you shall insert in your contract, if you are a contractor that has that possibility, some language that allows you to use a subcontractor. I think the Assembly tried to relet the contract, and the fear is if you go as far as reletting the contract, you will delay the project. So that's kind of the
quick question.
Right? I think that's the short version. Mr. Huff?
Yeah, finance. Is our understanding that you thought the language was too restrictive? That's no longer the case?
The Assembly version is absolutely too restrictive.
Senate is okay.
The Senate version, we have not actually seen the specific language, but the concept of it doesn't cause us any major concerns, and it's consistent with what the council is already doing.
Well, we'll hang off of it because we don't have the language.
No, that's fine. We'll get it. I think, but the concept of the Senate language was
I would concur with
was
it.
that
Just language.
it is something they've apparently done in practice, but
That's
we want
right.
to put it in statute to make us all feel better.
That's right.
So, all right. So just so we had the discussion and everybody can get a chance to think about it a little more. All right. That takes us through resources.
Are we holding the green chemistry item open?
Yes, we held the green chemistry item open. All right. So that gets us through a large chunk of the resources agenda. And we will move on as soon as we can maneuver Mr. Ellers off the dais to, which is next? General government? Can you do that one? There you go. Oh, you're getting so adept. All right. To the open items agenda of the general government. We have two items that folks have been working real hard on. I think that we're now ready to consider closing. One is the Consumer Protection Enforcement Initiative language. There had been some modifications, slight ones actually, to the department's proposed trailer bill language. Finance?
Kristen Shelton, Department of Finance. We have no concerns with the modified trailer bill language.
Okay. Does anybody else have any concerns with the modified trailer bill language? On the consumer, this is the Consumer Protection Enforcement. This is the same as this one I have, right?
Yeah, this is the exact same one.
All right. Hearing none, on a 5-0 vote on the Senate side, the modified trailer bill language. Yeah. All right. On a 5-0 vote on the Senate side, 5-0 vote on the Assembly side. That will be adopted. Finance wins another one. Look at that. You guys are doing good this week. Have to figure something out here. All right. Page 16. Okay, here's the big package. Conference compromise proposal on the assorted veterans issues. Oh, no. Yeah, that's it. So on this general government agenda, it is pages 16, 17, and 18, and it includes, the compromise includes the issue in the transportation agenda, in Department of Motor Vehicles. You'll recall, members, there was an open item there that relates really to this package. We'll dispose of it here. It was the DMV issue for the veterans.
Page 27.
Page 27 of the transportation agenda. Here's the proposed compromise has all of those items listed. This is the veterans proposals. 16, 17, and 18 on the general government agenda, and page 27 on the DMV agenda.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we're okay with the Veteran Administration portions of it, but not the DMV. So if we could
Which one?
split-
But not the DMV piece.
So if we could split that.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
We could
Let me
split
just make one amendment to the version before you on the DMV portion, just if it might make you feel better. I am advised this morning that rather than the $800,000 to pay for this, it would be $100,000 because the department is already going to do a new form this year, and therefore they can add this line without much difficulty. So the cost of doing the DMV portion has gone down to $100,000 out of the MVA account.
It's not the money, it's the policy. We just don't think DMV is the appropriate person, so agency to do it.
That's fine. I mean, I just wanted to make the.
I appreciate that.
There's a correction here, right? The finance.
Yes, that's correct. Since it's limited to the driver's license form only, and DMV is planning on revising the driver's license form, they can fold this change into that.
Yeah,
So it's a limited cost that can be absorbed.
If I understand it correctly, the only thing they'd be doing is adding a line to the form that says, "Are you a veteran, and do you wish further veterans information," which could then be transmitted to the Department of Veterans Affairs, right?
That's correct.
Could not the 100,000 just be absorbed, though? That's not a...
More or less,
Yes,
yeah,
the
I think they
100,000
can.
could be absorbed.
Yeah, absorbable 100,000.
You're talking about just putting another box right next to the organ donation, right next to the
Right.
voter registration. I mean, it's, 100,000 is a nice number, but I mean, I could do it on my computer for $5.
Right,
So
we can
it's,
absorb
or
it.
even for free, I'll do it.
Well,
So
they're absorbing it as part of the fact that they were already going to redo the form this year.
Right.
Made it an absorbable cost as they rewrite the form.
I guess that was the point, is to tell you folks this isn't a big deal. Yeah, I'll make the form on the word process.
MVA.
But I mean, it's
Yeah,
clearly...
Madam Chair, the only
that's
concern I
fine.
have, it's like opening up, it's like putting the nose of the camel under the tent flap.
fine.
The problem is, I don't have that itself, but then I can just envision what's going to happen next legislative
Gonna get a real
session.
long form.
We're going to start, it'll have a snowball effect, is what I'm afraid
We'll make a
of.
census form out of the DMV form. All right, so we will separate the vote. The first 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. We understand that this is not as much, certainly, as the administration had sought, and that this is certainly an important program for us. However, in the current environment, it just, it's difficult to give 800% augmentation. I think this is something like a 35% increase over anything the county veteran service officers have ever received in the past. It's a large infusion for them. We know they do good work with it and will draw down additional federal funds with it. And so, while it is not the level that the governor sought, it's certainly, like I say, is a 35% increase when everybody else in this budget be lucky to hold on to zero. So, well, we think the $8 million when the money shows up next year.
I just want to be clear, we're going to do it as trailer budget language.
Which one? The DMV is trailer bill.
In addition to the BBO.
In addition, so there's budget bill and trailer bill
Right, it's sort of the
on the DMV
trade-off.
portion. But we're voting first on the upper portion, Mr.
I must just confess, Madam Chair, respectfully, that we do have a member that feels
I know.
very strongly about
I know he
the 8.4, the welcome home, and we'd probably just vote no, kind of respectfully, in respect to our member who feels very strongly about that,
Yeah.
and rightfully so.
I
You make a
appreciate it.
good point in terms of the budget imperatives, and I'm in tune with that, but we do have to respect the profound feelings of a member.
I appreciate that, and I respect what he's trying to do, too. However, it just didn't seem possible at the moment. So 35% increase in veteran service officers funding. This would include also subvention issue for the information system for the CVSOs. I think the CVSOs get their information system too, and it deals with some of the Yountville issues with budget bill and trailer bill without, so that it can go to policy committee, basically, these questions of the Yountville. Is there surplus water? Is there a renegotiation of the golf course thing? That goes to policy committee. That would be on those 4 issues, not the DMV issue.
One question.
Yes.
Was the suggestion that if we included the $8.4 million, there'd be a vote for the budget?
There you go.
That
That's
was
too high
not
a
the
price.
idea. We
That's
do
too high
not do
price.
that here.
In fact,
Not necessarily from us, but there's a lot of other members.
No, it's not.
We just respectfully raise
No,
the issue.
I understand the concern.
But we'll vote for the entire package in good faith for everybody's had to suffer, and so Connie and I will be an aye
You
vote.
can abstain. You can do whatever you want. I mean, I certainly appreciate the sensitivity of your member who's worked very hard on creating a welcome home program, and there will be one. It just won't be quite as large up front as he would have liked, and I understand that.
I think what the senator and I are trying to say is we just want to be on record that we fully support the other proposition. But if this is what it is, then
all right.
On the $800,000, which is the redirected salary savings,
right.
It appears that's probably only one-time money, so we're going to need to revisit that piece next year.
Okay.
With all the ramp-up of the homes.
Sorry, there'll be opportunity next year to revisit this. We used part of this redirected money, so that helped a lot to make it as big as it is. People will need to refund the homes next year that we're redirecting from, but it is what it is. All right. On the first 1, 2, 3, 4 items, that would be a 5-0 vote on the Assembly side and a 5-0 vote on the Senate side. The DMV item taken as a separate agenda item. 3-2, 4-1, Mr. Huff? 4-1 on the Senate side. On the DMV issue? No, okay. 3-2 on the Senate side. 5-0 on the Assembly side. I think as a package, it will really get us the information and help them get to the CVSOs. And hopefully soon the federal government will match some of our efforts and get more funding to this program. Okay. That one's done. All right, we'll move to which agenda do I have left? You guys weren't. Public safety agenda. The parking penalty trailer bill language. I understand there is a proposed modified Senate trailer bill language on the parking penalty issue so that some cities will be less penalized or something. Elio, you want to tell us what we're proposing here?
Drew Soderborg, Legislative Analyst's Office. The proposed change to the parking trailer bill language is that it would be modified to make clear that the exception is only for this specific amount of money that was failed to be remitted, and it would also specify that the money must have been deposited in the local courthouse construction fund, and we'd note that the money deposited in the local courthouse construction fund ends up going to the state or to debt service on local courthouses, which have been transferred to the state.
And I think we were adding a placeholder trailer bill to give greater authority to the state controller to audit the court and AOC expenditures. That had not, there had been an issue as to whether the controller could audit the courts similar to they do other agencies. The placeholder trailer bill would authorize that opportunity for the state controller. People will have to see the detail, everybody work it out, but that's the concept. Senator Dutton?
You're in general, just...
Right now, apparently, the state controller can go into a lot of departments and do just kind of audit to make sure folks are spending appropriately. They do not have that authority with respect to the judicial branch, and the issue was, should they be able to do that with the AOC and the courts? Not a actual on it, it's not a BSA audit, just a kind of a go in and make sure folks are being spent. They just didn't have the authority, so the idea is to give them some. Anybody got any issues with that? Okay, hearing none. On a 5-0 vote, that will be adopted, and everybody will have to work out the actual language. Everybody will get to see it, make sure there's no issues there. On page 5. That was page 1. We now have page 5, the juvenile justice issue, draft language.
Yeah, Madam Chair, on this particular item, we just got the language, so we're going to need some more time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
To figure it out. But we are opposed to the elimination of the time ads, so we'd have a problem with that in any case.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I concur with that as well, and I have some serious concerns about the time ads. Would sure like to. This is a very significant policy redirection, I think, and we need to take a very careful look.
Finance? It was originally your proposal, but you backed off. Is that the deal?
The savings and the assumption that time ads was locked with the Department of Finance. Our January budget assumed that there would no longer be time ads used by the department. However, there was no statutory limitation at that time.
Senator Leno, this is heard extensively and somewhere.
We've gone around this block a few times already. Just the difference of opinion, not so much on the policy of the time ads, but whether to put it into statute or not.
I mean, there are, the idea here was to retain graduated sanctions, certainly want availability for discipline, but that time ads when you are on an indeterminate sentence seem a bit odd. These are indeterminate sentences to begin with.
Well, they're not really. They're a determinate sentence. The question with a youthful offender is, do you get out earlier than your set term? I mean, it is not an indeterminate term. I mean, it's
you can be held until you're 25.
Well, but again, that's a top. I mean, in the adult situation, it's life top. I mean, you can die in prison. But with the youthful offender, you will get out. It is really a determinate term. What is indeterminate is, do you get out earlier or on time?
I see.
But that is the point here.
But you can't add time past the 25th birthday.
Your behavior will be reviewed, and it will impact whether you are let out earlier or not. So to have time ads on top of that is the chair's point.
All right,
Madam Chair,
we have a difference. Yeah,
actually, the sentences are such that it is not they are indeterminate, as the chair indicated. It is not a sentence that assumes they will be let out at that time. It assumes that that is the time they will go before the parole board. That's the way they're...
And the board will find them suitable or not. And
correct.
If they find them not, then they do not
then
get
they
out.
keep, exactly. And so this, even the elimination of time ads still retains they're having to go before the board, and the board still determining whether to release or not. And if the board determines that it is not appropriate to release based on their behavior and such, they will not be released. So the time ads isn't really a factor in the parole board's determination. The time ads is only and solely a factor in when they go before the parole board.
I understand.
Madam Chair.
I understand.
All right. Who said that? Mr. Huff.
I did. Yeah, the time ads are a significant factor for the safety of those that are guarding these folks, because if they have no tools in their toolbox, then they just get blown off. It's up to a parole board to decide stuff, but it's the safety factor. And when you add time, it does have a deterrent factor for many of them.
Mr. Leno.
Could we hear from Finance as to why you support the non-use of time ads? If you could share with us the other kinds of carrots and sticks that are available, which leads you to the conclusion that time ads should not be used.
Well, the department has been making great efforts, as I testified last time, regarding increasing the use of time credits, and they think that that's a good motivator in terms of behavior and program completion. I think it's their policy that they will not use time ads, but as we discussed last time, they think that they're in certain circumstances having that authority is beneficial to them. But in terms of process, if there are no time ads, ads, then Assemblymember Skinner is correct. They would go before the board and be told that the action that they did take, which would have been subject to time ad, now results in them not getting a release order. So in sort of the bottom line, it gets to the sort of the same place. It's just when it happens, the board would know, I'm coming before the board. I have some sort of negative action against me. I will not get a decision.
Right. And do you think that these time ads are actually effective in adjusting behavior?
I think the department said by their actions in terms of the reductions that they've had in time ads and the increase in time credits, that I think the department say that time ads are not as effective, but they still would like to retain the authority.
Right. So that's our point of difference. But I just wanted to hear from the department that the department doesn't think they're effective, and that's...
Yeah. Well, I don't think in any best practices world, I think that's what we heard mostly in the subs, was that everybody's found other alternative ways of doing sanctions nowadays, and this wasn't one of the most useful ones. However, given that Senator Dutton wants to review the language, and although we may not agree on this portion of it, we want to see at least perhaps if we agree on the other portions of this and you hadn't looked at the language yet, we'll hold it open while people get a chance to review the language. All right. On page 8, the receiver plan.
Let's have a meeting just on that, okay?
The receivers, this is the receiver's computer money, right?
Before we reopen it, we need
Are we,
to do it again, okay?
I don't know, I think we're relatively comfortable. I understand the receiver continues to desire the entire amount, but it's our understanding he believes he can absorb the small reduction the Senate did. Is that anybody else's understanding of the world? And then we proposed some supplemental reporting language that would allow us to keep track of their costs on this. Finance?
I think it makes the achieving the reduction more difficult by taking the 25, but in adding it to the unallocated rather than targeting it against the specific projects, I think is something that I know that they've talked to members and it would be difficult. And it's already a difficult task, so adding the $25 million I think would make it even more difficult to get the reductions on top of the 11.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to argue for just accounting for that $25 million against their unallocated, that would be a credit. I mean, if you want to take the action or just don't take the action, this receiver very particularly has gone to great lengths to be very specific and give us a plan that's sort of unprecedented in this receivership game we've been dealing with for a number of years. They brought a lot of documents to me that I've reviewed, and I'm comforted that we don't need to take another shot at him. That's going to be a fairly substantial. He has also laid forth a roadmap to extinguish the receivership, and that's huge. So I think I would lean towards helping the receiver just a little bit.
Perhaps, okay, so a proposed alternative that I just heard was that we allocate the $25 million against the 811 so that it would be, I can't do that math that quick, 7 something.
No, it would grow to 836.
Or 836 would be the, it would be it would be applied against the unallocated? No, on two.
Added to or applied against?
Yeah, wouldn't it be lowering the unallocated?
Added would be...
I thought the intent was to fully fund the receiver's turnaround plan, and so, but that if you still wanted to score an additional savings, you would have to increase unallocated 836.
That's how it would work. Mr. Nielsen, you think that works?
Explain that again. I was distracted.
Well, if you wanted to fully fund and fully recognize the receiver's IT turnaround plan, then you would have to add the $25 million back to that funding. But then if you still wanted to score an additional $25 million of savings, you would increase the unallocated from 811 to 836 million. And as LACO suggested, we think that makes that more difficult to achieve the unallocated, but we continue to support the entire funding for the turnaround plan. So.
Well, you've lost me then, but that still takes additional $25 million haircut, and I'd rather avoid that.
Right, we agree, but it does recognize full funding, at least for the IT cost. But the receiver would still have to try to identify $25 million of savings elsewhere that, as we've mentioned, would still make it even more difficult for him to meet his reduction target.
I would rather argue and move that we simply credit the $25 million against the already unallocated, what is $860 million or whatever. So it'd be credited. That would be my motion.
You'd approve our proposal with the additional SRL then?
Oh, you guys aren't
Yeah.
on the time yet?
That would be my motion.
Right. So I fucked with the only part I got right.
It's increasing the unallocated cut.
We don't want to.
I thought I was hearing they wanted to increase the unallocated cut to $25 million.
Right, correct.
How's the theory of, I think we're a little nervous about whether he can achieve the 811 to begin with. Going to 836 makes it a little dicey. What if we round him up a little and just cross our fingers? Maybe 820 or so, and just we're either going to fund this thing or we're not. I'm hopeful that he really doesn't need to spend all the money he needs to spend in the technology projects. I understand the plan, and I think the Senate's action initially was based on the theory that if there really was he could come in for a deficiency. The receiver has relative access to deficiency funding should the technology project actually require the entire additional $25 million. But I understand his need to do all these projects and contract for them all at one time and feel secure that the resources are there. So, but perhaps we could increase the unallocated slightly, although I think $25 million would be pushing the envelope.
Well, that still is taking $25 million more out of their height, though. That's my point.
Oh, that's true. No, well, I was doing less than $25 million.
Oh, okay. In the spirit of compromise. And so what would be our amount?
The target for him instead of 811 would be 820.
That's fair enough.
I don't know. It's Assembly Democrat. I don't know if everybody.
I would just like
that's just a suggested compromise.
The roadmap that receivers outlined, in 5 years, I believe, and that's my figure, nobody else's. But this can save the state billions of dollars if we extinguish the receivership. And the cooperation between the department and all the relevant agencies seems to be going in good order, including on the IT stuff. So I believe we're finally making some progress with this after decades.
Yeah, I'm nervous about cutting the technology. All right. But we do have the supplemental report language. Is there any issue with that? All right. Finance okay with that? All right. But, all right, let's go there. So the issue would be, this would be Senate plus 25. It's the way we word this, right? On the actual technology item. But we reopen whatever other item that was and increase the savings to 820. All right? And we adopt the SRL. Okay? All right. On a 5050, that will be approved. Can we go back one moment to 5? I'm not sure anything we did to write this language different is going to change Senator Dutton's mind or Senator Nielsen's. Does anybody have an objection if we actually just vote on it now and close it? I don't know. I understand the concern about the time ads. Unless you want to divide the question, Mr. Nielsen, and vote on the top half and not the bottom half, we could divide the question. Are you anywhere on the realignment issues?
I haven't really talked about the others.
Mr. Nielsen, had you looked at those? There was trailer bill elements, and there's two sort of sets of them. One set, I believe, finance is pretty much things that you...
The shift language?
That on my little piece of paper, number 1 is identified as parole realignment issues. Do you have any problems with that portion?
And I think we've made a lot of progress in working out a solution.
So what identified on our little compromise page as the number 1? I can divide the vote if it helps at all. Mr. Huff?
We just got the language. We haven't talked to our caucus. We got to get a sense for where they are in this thing before we start representing them.
Yeah, I am in the same position. This is a huge change. It's something that actually was proposed in a more macro sense about 6 years ago by this administration, related to adult offenders also, and it collapsed. And I think this requires a lot more analysis than I'm convinced that I've got at this point. I'd be a no.
I'm okay with that, but I'm just trying to figure out if everybody's okay with
Isn't this the May revised language? It's not
more or less.
It's not anything new, right? I mean, it's not.
I mean, people will be working out the specifics as you go, but this is pretty much Finance's proposal. No?
One of the key elements of this is the impact on the counties and their ability to assume a lot of these responsibilities, and what will be the assurance of the counties of the funding that will be there, not just funding for probation service, not just for the management of the population, but for providing services, too, in the community.
I think I would just say that the language compromise is sort of a clarification and an improvement. We over what was in May. We've had extensive meetings with probation folks about this, and so they had some significant concerns about our May revision. And I think that the discussion addresses many, if not all, of their concerns regarding the funding identification, the process that any of these offenders would go through. So, from that perspective, we think there's been quite a bit of movement on this issue.
That may well be, but I have not heard from them, and I need to hear from them before I'm going to vote yes.
Yeah, and I have the same problem. So
I'll still move the Senate with the proposed trailer bill language.
We still want to divide the vote, but
sure.
Let's move on. Number 1, which is the Finance language that all parties and caucuses will continue to have input into, and if there are issues with this, it can come back. But for right now, to keep people on track to draft this in its final form on a 3-2 vote, the top half will be approved. And the bottom half, I understand the concern, and even Finance is not totally, although they support the policy, not the statute. That also appears to have a 3-2 support. Okay. Just so we don't have to come back to this page, members. Just trying to leave this down to the big issue, which is how to do adult corrections. All right. Next page. No, where are we doing? Not another page. No, we're changing agendas. Are we up to trans? Is that all there is left? Transportation. I think this is it, members, for those who are... this is the last one, at least, unless some other member has issues they're aware of that they want to talk about. It is my sense that we may have the ability to completely dispose of the transportation agenda today. No? No. All right. We have language that has circulated, a modified version of an LAO compromise on the PID issue, at least. LAO, it's proposed supplemental report language, members, rather than trailer bill, and no fund shift. LAO?
Right. Eric Johnson with the LAO. While we believe the proper cost alignments would create incentives to maximize this program's efficiency in an effort to reach a compromise, our revised recommendation is for the budget year to reject the administration's proposal to shift the funding to reimbursements. Instead, continue to fund the work with state resources, but also adopt the suggested SRL to help clear up some of the misunderstandings and hopefully better inform this discussion next year.
Finance?
Mark Monod, Department of Finance, and we're okay with the supplemental reporting language. The information would help the analysis next year, but we continue to support our proposal to require locals to reimburse the state for this work.
Yeah, I think the issue that I heard, at least from some, was that if we don't keep doing this and we're sort of don't have the backlog of projects when opportunities like federal funding and such come up, that we may not have enough. I mean, one of the reasons we were able to take advantage of as much of the Reinvestment Act funds as we were is because we had a lot of projects ready with PIDs in place, ready to go, local, state, everybody was on board. So the concern I heard, at least, is if we aren't sort of doing this on a regular basis, that we may not have the projects necessary in line. And if you leave the locals just deciding which ones they want to have done, it gets a little dicey, right? Elio, is that an accurate?
That is roughly accurate. To the extent that the work would actually get done, I mean, the work that needs to be done would still be done. There was still budgeting state resources for a shelf, and so there would be a shelf available. This is
of state projects, but the local projects
and of local projects. There's just to the extent that there are additional local projects beyond, an appropriate shelf, that would be required to be reimbursed.
All right. Well, the idea is for people to get a better look at it next year, at least at the moment, without shifting without asking the locals to do reimbursement at a time when they're just as budget strapped as we are. On a 5-0 vote. I'm sorry, Senator Nielsen. Mr. Nielsen. Oh, you're at 9. Okay. 5-0 vote, that will be adopted. All right, we were, do we want to discuss that? That leaves only one item here, which is, it's 5 pages, but it's really one item, which is the High-Speed Rail Authority issues. Both houses took different, reporting issues and trying to make sure that we are asserting appropriate oversight over this, but I know there's ongoing discussions. Mr. Lowenthal?
Yeah, I think we're pretty close. I think that really the High-Speed Rail Authority is supportive now of the Senate proposal. They want to go forward. They really want to communicate that to the Assembly members. And so, obviously, what had taken place was that in the Budget Subcommittee, they committed that they would do this. They would, because of their...
Let's identify. Let me take 1 second. Let me just straighten up the discussion here. Actually, I'm looking at the proposed compromise that was all the different pages, and the only one that seems to me to be in contention
is right. There's only one is the report and the 1 quarter, and it's really the 1 quarter
the funding
annual funding contingent upon their providing a report, which they said they're fine with.
All right,
but they need to keep communicating that. Originally, they said they had some problems with it. They committed to doing it in the Budget Subcommittee. They said they'd be fine. They now wish to communicate that to the Assembly. So let's leave that part open, because they're fine with that, the reporting and holding. They do not believe it will impact them in any way. We can talk about what the reasons are, but we don't have to go through all that. It's been an extremely frustrating experience getting them to kind of stay on task. We are all supporters of the high-speed rail, yet there's a state audit report that says they've got to get better. There's LAO has challenged a number of times their business report. They're getting that together. They are in the process now of, and so the Senate asked Budget Subcommittee to make sure that they get these reports in on time. They committed to doing that. They now want to commit to the Assembly that they can do that on time before we vote on it. And they said they're fine with that. And they will be communicating that this week.
Okay. Mr. Blumenfield.
I think we're getting very close to being able to work this one out. It's just we need to hold it open for a little bit. I would be curious from Finance their views on this.
On the proposed compromise, it has 5 elements. Some Senate.
No, it's not it's the Senate version. It's not the They said they
on that issue.
On that issue.
On the rest of the package, there are some that are Senate and some that are Assembly.
Right. The rest of it.
And I'm just trying to get the whole package discussed by Finance.
Yes, and with regards to the whole package, we're okay with all of the compromises, with the exception of the making 25% of their budget contingent upon the report. We think they'll have the report on time.
But is there any harm to them?
There, in terms of making 25% of the budget contingent upon that deadline, there is concern that it affects the way in which contractors work. That they first of all might put resources towards more sure funding if they have other projects elsewhere, and that they might wait to do certain work that they might work ahead on otherwise until that 25% has been approved.
All right, Elio?
Our understanding, looking at the current year's budget where we held 50% of the money contingent, as of the end of November, so the money was held through December, the executive reports from the executive summary reports from the program management consultant indicated that the regional consultants were in fact spending slower than was anticipated, but they indicated that it was for other reasons, alternative alignment work. They never at any point commented on the fact that they were concerned that they wouldn't get paid in the spring. So we don't have any history to show that this would be an issue. I think it may be an issue with other capital outlay programs. High-speed rail, we have no indication that would be the case.
No, they have it just indicated, and that's what they want to communicate to everybody else, that they do not have a problem with it. Even though finance may indicate that they're worried about that, the authority, which has to pay that, is going to communicate that they're fine with that.
We are. I mean, there is a new director there, and I think there has been a lot of discussion with him in the last couple weeks, and he's, very new, like 2 weeks new or something. So he's still learning his way around the building, but he knows that his members did commit to being able to do this in the Senate at least, and I think that's what we're following on. Mr. Dutton?
Yeah, I need to clarify, make sure I understand. What's the source of funding for this?
The bond.
And the bond hasn't been sold yet?
Some bonds have been sold.
For the high-speed rail?
In the current year, yes, because they're 100% bond funded in the current year.
Right. Now, what about the other bonds that are out there that were approved by voters before this for schools and roads and things like that? Have those been put on the back burner to go forward with this one? Or are they going forward too, or what?
I'd have to... My understanding is they have not been put on the back burner, but we'd have to get back to you on that. I don't know.
Well, I know that, I understand, but this isn't ready yet either. But I'm concerned, I know there's some money that for rail improvements, things like that, that has to do with the, moves, goodsments, things of that nature, and I've been hearing a lot of complaints about the bonds were approved for transportation in schools, but the money's not being let out, and I was told that they were actually being held up. Because they didn't want to create a worse cash flow problem with regards to the budget. So I'm just curious on this one here, because this was just approved by the voters, how did it get put in front of these other bonds for other projects?
Yeah, we'll have to get back to you with it regarding how the actual bond sales were allocated to what types of projects. So we can get back to you on that.
There was about $8 billion sold this spring, and you're asking where those went, and we can find that out.
I just want to make sure that these other bonds didn't get put on the back burner just for this project, and if that's the case, I don't know when. Anyway, that's the reason I can't really support it at this time, because I need to.
All right. Well, we'll check on what's going on.
I'm concerned we're putting other projects on the back burner that, frankly, should be underway right now.
No, I don't think that's happening. I think what happened is that the treasurer has been able to release the bonds that were held up last year because of the problems from 2009. And those projects are moving out. But we can get that status update on the 1B and 1E and whatever other ones are out there right now. Before we come back to this, hopefully soon next week,
yes.
Then we can actually close that transportation, because this one overarching issue of high-speed rail oversight is the only one left in transportation, although it is 6 items. It is essentially one issue. So. When we can get back to that, members, that will allow us to close that agenda. We now are at a stage, unless somebody has another already heard issue that they wish to ask further questions on at the moment, we will recess upon call of the chair for the foreseeable future. I think the question, as we try to work, as we knock out some of these issues, remember, I appreciate everybody's cooperation today to get as much of this off the table as we can. We can focus on these bigger ones that are the heart of
up in arms.
the differences, if you will, between caucuses, houses, finance, and whoever at the moment, which go to how do you reduce some of these very important programs that where you can't just do them by numbers, you have to do them by policy. We are now at sort of pretty much taken most of the other issues out of the agenda. If we're going to do changes to the way we do business, changes to ways people are eligible for things, any of those, are complicated discussions. I know a lot of folks have been involved in discussions on in-home supportive services, that there are discussions around corrections and how to effectively utilize both state and local resources to build public safety, if you will, and at the same time to make sure that we are doing that, effectively and with the dollars that we have. So I think some of those group discussions on some of these issues and solving some of the bigger water and resources questions are still out there. So there's lots of working groups and members being involved in those conversations and with stakeholders to ensure that we know all the facts that are necessary. So over this weekend, that work will continue. We will remain upon call of the chair. We don't have a set time because at this point in the agenda, it's as we find things that we really need to discuss here and or have proposed compromises, proposed alternatives from the LAO, from the finance, from any of us. If we've come up with alternatives on some of these issues, then we'll try to agendize them. So people stay in touch with Senate Budget Office as you think of things that might help move us toward alternatives and closures on some of these issues. And we will reconvene next week. I just don't know exactly when yet, as we see how those discussions evolve over the weekend. So is that fair? Everybody okay with that? Okay. On that basis, we will adjourn for today, and we will remain upon call of the chair through the weekend and all of next week, and then we'll see where we are.